On behalf of all assembled here today, I should now like to invite our newest alumnus, Dr. Antoni Cimolino, to address Convocation. They're on. Yeah.
You're right, it was better after that. Thank you. What a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and on this exciting day, a milestone in terms of your life and your work, the beginning, of course, of so much more, but an important day. And to share it with all the parents who are here, it's exciting, and I really appreciate, I'm of course honored, but it's just great to be in this room. All right, so thinking about that in preparation for this, I think I understand how this was supposed to go, you know. Most of you who are graduating here today are young, and I am somewhat older. And so I feel a bit of pressure here, especially as a former actor, to play the role, play the part of the sage. You know, I feel it is my duty to offer you nuggets of wisdom and glean from my experiences in the years since I graduated, sometime in the last century. I feel I ought to tell you, for instance, that your learning is far from over, the fact that, in fact, it's just really begun, that you shouldn't think you know all the answers because you haven't quite even gotten to most of the questions yet. And I should probably advise you to make the most of your youth. And that's because it will feel different when you're my age. And that's because of this weird law of physics. Are there any scientists in the room today? Good, we can say anything. All right. And this weird law of physics is that time accelerates as you age. It's a kind of relativity, you know, because when you're 8 years old, a summer will take about 3 years to pass. And then as when you get older, summer's lease has dates that just keep getting shorter and shorter. So playing my part as sage, therefore, I'd be urging you to slow down. I'd be telling you don't get caught up in the world of getting and spending, and rather to take time to smell the roses and to engage in things that really lift the spirit. Things like theater, I might add, disingenuously. Life is shorter than you think, and you really ought to set some time to come visit the Stratford Festival. By which point your eyes would have glazed over and you'd all be surreptitiously checking your phones. And you'd be quite right, too, because it's ridiculous of me to think that I might be able to impart wisdom to you, especially in a 10-minute speech. Wisdom, of course, is something that comes to us. We have to find it for ourselves, and we only really get it the hard way. So all I can do here, really, is wish you well in your quest. So in the time remaining to me, I'd like to turn this around. I'd like to, rather than me trying to give something to you, I'd like to see what I and what we can take away from this moment today, this moment in time. I look at you, and I see something very, very exciting. I look at you, and I see explorers ready for discovery. Now, I know many of you are there thinking, you have no idea what's going through my mind, the choices I have to make, the anxiety I might be feeling, my hopes, my fears. As was mentioned, we have a daughter who's 22, a son who's 24, and they're facing many of the same issues that you're facing. I remember many years ago when I was your age, and you have to make decisions that seem to have implications that go far beyond what you might be able to handle today. I remember the day I came home and told my parents I wasn't going to go to law school, I was going to become an actor. This is, for the parents, a very happy day in our household, by the way. Yeah. Or a few years later, having gotten a degree and then been accepted into a very good grad school in the United States with a very lucrative scholarship, sometime in August of that year, I decided I wasn't going to go. Because I realized that my professional development needed to go elsewhere, and also I didn't want to move away from the woman I loved. Now, In telling those two stories, you realize everybody here is horrified they gave me a degree. What is he saying? They're thinking. But my point is that it's in that very back and forth, the very decisions and the questions that you're asking, more importantly at this time, that you really are experiencing the greatest strength, the thing that's really defining and wonderful at your time of life, which is that you're still finding your way. And you're not totally locked into any mindset yet. You're still open to ideas, and you're open to new opportunities. The words, but we haven't done it that way, or we don't do it that way, or we've always done it this way, haven't yet entrenched themselves in your minds as the ultimate justification for resisting change. Openness to new ideas is vitally important in my field. And I know you're probably thinking, well, that's kind of strange because you present plays that are 400 years old, or in the case of the Greeks, 2,400 years old. People's understanding of those plays and audiences' expectations of them have been shaped by centuries of theatrical tradition, which isn't necessarily a good thing. If we want those plays to mean anything to us today, we have to come at them as if they were absolutely brand new, as if it had just come in from the new play development department. We've got this script, it's called Hamlet. Or we have this script, it's called Oedipus Rex, and it's just in our hands for the very first time. It's harder than you might think to look at new as something that is so familiar, but that's what interpretive artists have to do. Our success depends on our ability and our willingness to continually be reinventing the wheel. Just as technology changes our world, frustration with old ideas and attitudes is changing our society. Our understanding of what constitutes acceptable behavior, for instance, is evolving. And the way the arts reflect the world around us has to change too. Keeping up with change, or rather staying ahead of it, is a very big part of my job. At the festival, we need to contribute to change as well as hold the mirror up to it. So I'm really grateful for the young artists who come into our company. You know, they bring with them, and they bring to the work not only fresh talent, not only new ideas, they also bring a new sensitivity about how we go about doing that work. I feel they're much more likely, for instance, to be up for a discussion about the power dynamic in a given room than their older peers are, and to question it. How do we make art? What assumptions is it based on? What kind of relationships are we currently insisting need to be in place that perhaps don't? When we're young, we're eager to explore and take risks. In that regard, I take inspiration from every young person in this room. But here's the catch. As we get older, and you're doing it right now, and figure out the things that work best for us, the things that we're most comfortable with, we start to lose that questing spirit. We start to appreciate the comfort and the safety of familiarity. We hang out with those who are like-minded. We seek and we easily find confirmation of our attitudes in the friendships that we hold, the newspapers that we read, the people we follow online. It's human nature. And before we know it, we're saying, well, we've always done things that way. This is how things are. Professionally and personally, it is vitally important to stay open to change and growth. And once we've learned something and had that learning reinforced by experience, it's tempting to think we know it all. It's hard, very hard, to be humble enough to admit that we're always going to keep learning. So a key factor here is empathy. If you can imagine what it feels like to see another person's point of view, you're more than halfway towards accepting that there might be something just possibly in that person's point of view. So if we want to continue to grow, then cultivating empathy is a good way to start. As it happens, that's something the theater does for us rather well. It doesn't offer us a single point of view. It engages us emotionally in the fates of characters who are in conflict, one with the other. And that's a special strength of Shakespeare. We don't really know what any one person might be thinking. We can come up with contradictory hypotheses about why a character like Henry V takes action. Are they a hero or a war criminal? And the answer could well be both. So it invites us to look across at the eyes of the other person and imagine what they might be thinking or feeling. And in doing so, the theater invites us to think about where our boundaries of our sympathies lie and challenge us to push past them. The theater is a place where people my age can act like children and play games of let's pretend. It lets us imaginatively inhabit other mindsets, vicariously undergo experiences other than our own. Artists and audience alike get to explore parts of themselves that otherwise would go unrecognized and unacknowledged. We feel the sense of possibility in those moments, the sense that we all have naturally when we're young, but that tends to dwindle as we age. Very real possibilities lie before you, here and now. You are the explorers that will find our future out, as well as your own, who will, in fact, create it. You are the progenitors of change. In the years ahead, the world is going to pass more and more into your hands as people of my generation and older begin to relinquish their grip on it. Please give careful thought about what you're going to do with it. Some of you may become activists, embracing big social and political causes. That's terrific, and good luck to you. Those of you who don't take that route, please embrace the no less important causes of day-to-day civility, humility, and kindness. Please treat each other well. As we look around in the world today, so much could be addressed by just some civility, humility, and kindness. If you can't change the world, consider how you might go about changing yourselves. Please don't lose the capacity to consider the possibility that you might be wrong. Please always be explorers. Don't settle for being sages. You see, I managed to give you some advice after all. Did I mention that you really ought to find some time in your busy lives ahead to come to the Stratford Festival? Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for sharing this day with me. And I wish you Godspeed in your lives in the years ahead. Thank you.